Evening, and welcome to the October 24th, 2018 meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. We're called to order. If you have any devices with you, would you please silence them at this time? Right, our first order of business this evening is to vote the minutes of October 17th. Does anybody, Betsy?
I've read them and they look fine to me, so I move that we accept them.
Second?
All right, any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so moved.
Cell phones?
Next, under other business, we have a review and vote of the Tony Andrews Farm lease, and we have our assistant town manager here, Peter Johnson Stott.
So I don't have to turn my phone down.
Good evening.
Good evening, Peter.
So we are here tonight seeking the Commission's approval of a lease award to Jeff Andrews. This follows a competitive selection process. And as the Commission may recall from the last time I was here, the way the charter is set up, the selection of the most advantageous proposal is the domain of the town manager. However, as the Commission has care and custody of the property, award of the lease does require a vote of the Commission. So I know you all have received the lease, and I'm sure you've all committed it to memory. But for the public, I'll just very briefly touch on a couple of highlights from the lease. First of all, the selection process resulted in an award to Jeff Andrews. We received two proposals, and clearly he has demonstrated experience with his success on this very property. So I won't go into any more detail in terms of the selection process. The lease itself comes with a $1 rental, and it also, so there's no real income to the town. There's also no cost to the town. That was one of the options that we afforded to the respondents in the request for proposals, was to say, do you need a town subsidy for equipment or irrigation or outbuildings in order to run a viable farm? And Mr. Andrews is not seeking any such funding, did not seek it in his proposal, and is not receiving any in the lease as it is written. The lease does, the lease and Mr. Andrews' proposal, so they come together as a contract. So the lease is a separate document that just details sort of the terms of of the roles and responsibilities of the tenant and the landlord, but then the details of how Mr. Andrews plans to operate the farm are in his proposal, which becomes part of that lease contract as well. And in that, he has committed to environmentally sensitive farm practices, including participation in the Massachusetts Partners with Nature program, which I understand is sort of the next level after integrated pest management. It is not organic, although he does not, has not and will not be using any herbicides. Let's see, what else can I tell you? It is a 5-year term with a 15-year renewal. And the lease does require that he maintain access to the open space parcel that is owned by the 300 Committee along the pond front, along Pond 14. And I think that's about it. With that, I'll open up to any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Mark?
I didn't commit it to memory. I'm sorry. Can you remind me, what is there in the lease about maintaining the physical property? The buildings, the machinery?
Sure. So the machinery is all the responsibility of the farmer. All of the machinery, any irrigation is all their responsibility, not ours. The only responsibility that the town has, and this really comes from state tenant law, is that the town has to provide a habitable dwelling. So included in the lease is the ranch house, and so we need to keep that in habitable condition. So that means, the roof, the septic system, you know, the plumbing needs to be in working order, but any, you know, painting, minor repairs is the responsibility of the tenant.
And as far as the machinery, how do we know he's keeping it up?
Well, we don't, it's his. I mean,
Thank you.
we're not, you know, we're not providing him, there was no machinery that the town owned and
Oh.
gave to him, right? So the only machinery that exists there will be machinery that he already owned.
So the only properties in the town owns are the outbuildings,
Exactly, right.
and he has any responsibility to keep them painting or shored up or whatever
Correct.
is
Yep.
required.
Yep.
Thank you.
Peter?
You mentioned that the conservation land or the 300 community land is adjacent. What kind of access will be through the property to that land or parking or anything to do with that?
Sure. Yeah, so Berry Patch Lane is an unpaved road that is in existence now, has long been in, and that provides access through the farm right down to the pond. So right down to that 300 committee land. That-
So in the lease, the public has the right to trespass that road?
Correct.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you. Steve?
In the same vein, it won't be blocked off during seasons, or
No, you know,
there's entertainment on Halloween,
right, so.
access?
Right, so there, you know, I can't guarantee that there won't be a moment that, you know, that the trail might be inaccessible, but generally, it's gonna be open and accessible all the time. What, you know, what won't be accessible necessarily is the public doesn't have a right to, you know, wander through the fields of the farm itself, right? So the farmer needs to be able to farm and operate their farm, but that access road is to be kept clear and open to the public at all times.
Okay. The reason, there is no barrier between the fields and the road.
There is not.
And the road is, it's an exaggeration to call it accessible in most of the experiences I've had, but that's the way it'll be.
Right, sorry, so when I was using the term, I didn't mean it in an ADA sense.
I understand.
Right. It is a
All right,
dirt road.
thank you.
Yep.
Jamie?
Said the ranch house is included in the lease. What about the old main house?
That is not included in the lease. So that is on a separate parcel, a separate house lot. The 398 old farmhouse house lot is not included in this lease. Now, what we have provided through the RFP is a right of access to the outbuildings on that property, not the farmhouse, but the garage and the sheds are on that other house lot. And through October 1 of 2020, Jeff Andrews will have the right to access those outbuildings. And then after that, the town has no commitment. So that is a decision yet to be made, that we need to, our next phase of our management of this property is to determine the disposition of that house lot. And you will be hearing from us. There's a nonprofit Farm Falmouth group that has some interests, and we'll be having some dialogue with the Agricultural Commission about, and the Board of Selectmen and this commission about the fate of that parcel.
Is it completely restricted to agricultural use?
Yes, so there are a couple of different parcels. So the parcels that have historically been farmed are lots, I believe it's A1 and parcel B, and those are agricultural and open space restricted. And then there's house lot A1 and A2, or sorry, A2 and A3.
Thank you.
Thank you. Courtney?
I can't think of a better steward. I don't know if it's appropriate at this point. I know there's more discussion, but I'll make a motion to accept the lease as written.
Thank you.
I'll second it, because they made the motion.
No
Kevin.
questions.
Maury?
I just had a couple questions. Will there be parking and signage so that people will know that there's public access?
Yes, in fact, a sign was installed a month ago, and it was destroyed last week. It was apparently an accident. We don't know exactly how it happened, but there is a lovely sign that will be replaced, and we will put it in a different location. We didn't think it was in a particularly vulnerable location, but apparently we were mistaken.
That would be great, only because
yeah.
we've had other parcels that have difficulty of signage and access for people to visibly see that they can use it. So this is such a nice parcel, and I just don't want it to not be used.
Right, yeah, the sign makes clear it's, I think the sign says Andrews Farm and Andrews Grove, is that what it, yeah. So, and it's right, the new location where we're gonna put it is right by Berry Patch Lane, which I think, as opposed to right near the parking lot for the farm stand. So that might be an even better location in terms of marking where the public access is.
The next question, liability insurance, who holds that? Is it the grower, the farmer, or the town?
We do require the farmer to have
Okay.
their own insurance and provide a certificate of insurance.
Okay.
But there is still a liability that comes to the
With the
town,
town.
so there is an insurance cost to the town.
Right.
For having ownership of the property.
Right, only because with equipment and children and all that.
Absolutely.
And then the next question, in the memo we got, it was the partner with nature, which I looked into that a little bit. On the cranberry bogs, we had organic farming for a reason. And my one question is this is now owned by the Conservation Commission, well, we have jurisdiction over it, it's owned by the town. I'm concerned with, I know you said he's not gonna use any herbicides, but fungicides and insecticides are very detrimental to the water, to everything. And I just, this board, we sort of steer toward, I mean, like I said, with cranberry growing, we absolutely abandoned any use of herbicides, fungicides, pesticides. And I think that that would be one of the things I would like to see in there. I know Partners with Nature, nature is better than the IPM, the Integral Pest Management, but it's still not there. You know, you can have groundwater contamination, you need one jug of, you know, insecticide to go into the ground, and it becomes a hazardous waste site. So that was just one of my concerns, that as a, you know, Conservation Commission, we usually try to steer away from those things. And I would have to add that into the lease, that it would be organically farmed, but I'm sure I will not be the dissenting vote here. Thank you.
If I could, so we talked about that with the Agricultural Commission, and there's obviously a benefit to the environmental impact of having it be certified organic. The trade-off is that sometimes the distinction between certified organic and not certified organic is less environmental and more regulatory, but the larger issue is that we did not want to limit the viability of the farm. The bottom line was that the message that we heard from the community at town meeting was that they don't want, that they want to see this property farmed long-term. That was the clear desire. And if the farmer, we didn't want to place the economic restriction on the farmer and have that become a cause of the farm not being financially viable. So that was ultimately why we did not include that requirement.
So organic farming, organic farm stands and farms aren't viable?
No, I'm not saying that it can't be done or it shouldn't be done. I'm saying we don't want to be the ones to make that economic decision. We wanted to leave the discretion of how to best make this small New England farm economically viable to the farmer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Betsy?
Hi, Peter. I, like Mark, did not memorize this. And my question is, since this farmer probably won't farm for 50 years, but it would be beneficial to, as a town-owned property, to learn sort of what was successful and what wasn't. What I'm wondering is there a plan that Jeff will provide sort of an outlook, a year outlook as to what he's proposing to do, and then give a report? And, so each year you would project ahead, and then you would say, this was successful, and this wasn't for the following reason, so I'm gonna switch to something else. I'm just wondering if that's
Yeah.
part of the lease.
It is not part of the lease. However, we did receive that information in the proposal. We did require those who are proposing to provide a pretty detailed farm plan and business plan. So we do have that plan for this year. And your point is very well taken, and those discussions are already in process. We did make it known through the RFP that we want to encourage community engagement, and I've already had discussions with Jeff Andrews about working with Farm Falmouth, the nonprofit, to explore ways that they can serve as an incubator and provide learning opportunities for local farmers. So I think Farm Falmouth may play a really helpful role in learning and documenting and communicating with Jeff Andrews so that there is a local repository of knowledge about what's working on the farm and what isn't.
Okay, thanks.
Great point.
All right, thank you. Good presentation. Does anybody else on the commission have a comment or question at this point?
Can I just ask Jen, because I don't have the document in front of me, what is Article 5, Section C? I think it's like the 5th page.
Of the lease agreement?
Yes.
Give me 1 second, all right.
Sorry.
Wanna grab it?
I know what I'm looking for. Thanks. There it is, in there, C. Well, it says tenant shall utilize only pesticide and herbicides, and you just said he's not gonna use herbicides, so can that be stricken?
I could discuss that with the farmer.
Because this is what is, that's what we have, and so I just
You're
wanna
right,
make sure.
that's what this is the lease as we wrote it
Yep.
before receiving proposals, and we did not modify it based on his proposal. But his proposal is also part of his contractual obligation to the town. But the suggestion is reasonable.
I just think that, again, we're a conservation commission. Organic farming is very viable. It's growing and growing, no pun intended, all over the country. And people, I think, are willing to pay more, which makes it a more viable resource financially for the farmer. And we don't have a nice, big organic farm anywhere. So it might be something he might swing to in the future.
Perhaps.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the public? All right, Mark, you had some.
Yeah, excuse me, are there any plans to do something with that, what might be an attractive nuisance in the back off from the road, which looks like it was a Halloween assembly? It's kind of a building and a few big trailers, and
Have you seen them recently? I don't
I
think
haven't
they're,
been there in 6 months, maybe.
I think it's
See if
all
been
gone.
pulled out?
Yeah,
Good. Thank you.
yeah, we before closing on the property in February, we required all of those structures to be removed.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion, but we also now have a proposal to discuss one item with the tenant for the town. So I'm not sure what bearing that has on our vote.
I can withdraw the motion, and we can redraft it to include
Okay,
further discussion of that. I'm not sure how to draft,
well, I'm not sure
I'll
either,
just make
but,
a
Well,
motion
if
to
nobody else
withdraw
has
my-
Or-
any issues with it,
if,
I'm
well,
the only one. The vote will carry, because I'll be the only one that'll vote against it with that in there. So I wouldn't hang it up for that purpose.
right, but it's been said that you would discuss adjusting the lease to accommodate that. So that's what I'm asking about.
Yes, I mean, I guess the commission could approach it in a couple of different ways. One would be to approve the lease with the understanding that we are going to seek that amendment, and that way I don't have to come back. Another, but if you want to be absolutely certain of it, you could have your vote of approval be subject to the inclusion of that amendment.
Okay,
That sounds,
all right.
wanna hold it off.
So would you like to,
Well, what I'll do is I'll withdraw my motion.
okay,
I'll withdraw my second.
Okay.
all right.
So, how does the board feel? Do they want to?
Just modify your
I
lease,
will, yeah.
Yeah.
just like Peter said.
So I will modify my motion
Your motion.
to approve the lease as, with an amendment to, what is it, approve organic farming? or-
No, to
No, to
restrict,
remove herbicides.
Okay, remove herbicide, okay.
We'd like to see it organic and maybe.
okay, so,
Article 5, Section C, remove the use of
Right, the words.
herbicides.
Yep.
so that's the new motion.
We have a second.
We have a second.
I second it.
Okay, all right. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Unanimous, so moved.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, next, requests for determination of applicability. For these applications, the applicant wants to have a negative determination. That means that they do not, their application is adequate, they don't need to go to another level of review. So first, we have Noshan Trust Incorporated, 21 Luscombe Avenue, Woods Hole, Massachusetts, for permission to repair platform on both sides of dock, replace timber, and secure pilings. Brendan?
Madam Chair, the staff recommends a -2 determination under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed by this RDA.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the public? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Next, John Tudor, 161 Coonamessett Circle, East Falmouth, Massachusetts, for permission to vista prune according to FWR 1018-10B.
Madam Chair, the staff recommends a -2 determination under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed by this RDA.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments from the board? Anything from the public? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so moved. Mike Miles, 181 Coonamessett Circle, East Falmouth, Massachusetts, for permission to vista prune according to FWR 1018-10B.
Madam Chair, the staff recommends a -2 determination under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed by this RDA.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments from the board? Anything from the public? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so moved. Alan Silverman, 4464 and 84 Bay Shore Drive, North Falmouth, Massachusetts, for permission to install 4 utility poles in road layout adjacent to existing pavement.
Madam Chair, the staff recommends a -2 determination under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed by this RDA.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments from the board? Anything from the public? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so moved. Felicity and Don Winter, 79 Nashawena Street, West Falmouth, Massachusetts, for permission to remove one existing leach field, abandon one existing leach field, and install a denitrifying septic system.
Madam Chair, I have to recuse myself.
All right, I think you can stay.
Madam Chair, the staff recommends a -2 determination under the state and bylaw, and resource area boundaries are not confirmed by this RDA.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any questions or comments from the board? Anything?
Kudos to the guy, though.
Yes. Anything from the public? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, unanimous, so moved. All right. Now, we move on to requests for hearings under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. Tonight, we have Town of Falmouth, care of Raymond Jack, 0 and 62 John Parker Road, map 28-03-018-000 and 28-05-012-000, Falmouth, Massachusetts, for permission to restore and improve fish passages, stream and wetland function, and aquatic and terrestrial habitat within a portion of the Coonamessett River and its adjacent riparian zones. This work will build on the restoration recently completed on the lower bog. So, Nick.
Nick, I think if you just move the mouse, it just comes back to life. Yep. No.
Something's
There we
happening.
go.
Okay, all right.
That was the
Can
night
you-
view.
Can you shut the lights right above Nick's and stop the glare?
Yes, I think we were
Here we go.
told that there's a level 3, there's a dimmer somewhere.
No,
Is that
that's
right?
not a dimmer,
No?
that is, that
Oh, I'm sorry, I
is
was
volume.
thinking, never mind, I'm sorry, I was thinking of microphones.
There we go,
That's good.
That's good.
fine.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here again on behalf of the town of Falmouth and the applicant, the Falmouth DPW. I'm just going to present a few slides to help explain the designs for this project.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Nick, could you just identify yourself, please?
Sorry, my name is Nick Nelson with Interfluve. Is there anything else you need from me?
I think that's,
So a lot of partners involved in this project, very similar to the Lower Bog Restoration Project. So a lot of these designs are similar. I'll go through a few slides that just kind of, so we all on the same page as to where we are. Coonamessett River flowing from Coonamessett Pond down to Great Pond here, and we are looking at the middle and upper bogs. So the lower bog here was restored early this year, and we'll be working on the upper middle bogs there. As you mentioned, this is a project with a few goals involved. Fish passage, so opening up better passage at the middle berm right here, and then the John Parker Road crossing there. Those are undersized crossings. Reconnecting the river and floodplain, lots of new plantings like we had for Lower Bog, and just general ecological restoration. So just a quick look at what we did for Lower Bog and before and after. So this is an image from 2017. So the remeandering of the stream through restoration, removal of the ditches, and plantings. This was right about February, so very early on after the restoration project. The boardwalk was not in place yet in that image. A few existing conditions images here. So this is the middle berm crossing here. You can see the culvert there is perched, so fish can get through, but it's a little bit challenging for those herring. And looking upstream from there, the channel right down the middle there, and then the farm on either side. This was just taken last year. In Upper Bog as well, similar conditions, a fairly straightened channel down the middle. There are ditches all around the edges and throughout the bogs to drain these bogs. And then you can start to see the pine trees growing up in there, indicative of kind of those drier conditions. So the goal for this project is to make this site wetter and to create a stream and wetland ecosystem. Just in plan view, I rotated this so we could see the whole project site here. Existing conditions flowing from left to right. Similar to the Lower Bog Restoration Project, the surrounding dirt roads will be used for access all the way around both of these. And then the existing sand pits will be used to store any excess material and for staging for equipment and materials. Already there's being wood stockpiled in Middle Bog here, and soon more wood will be stockpiled in Upper Bog to put onto the floodplain surface and in the channel during restoration. So just a flip through a couple of the design sheets here. You can see the existing channel in the, this will be easier. So existing channel here with the faint topographic lines here, and then the proposed channel. More sinuous channel will utilize portions of the existing channel where we already have meander bends, like this one right here. So the river will be narrowed, but will essentially use the same plan form as you work downstream through this area. Flax Brook coming through underneath John Parker Road up here will then enter the Coonamessett River as well in a new stream channel. And the boardwalk, very similar to the lower dam boardwalk that was just put in, will be installed just downstream of the existing middle berm here. For Upper Bog, very similar, again, utilizing some portions of the existing channel, like this small bend right here, and then going back out to create a more sinuous channel. I have a couple of areas right here and over here. This is where we see very deep peat underneath the sand. There's not much peat in either of these bogs, but in those two locations, there's about 15 to 20 feet of peat underneath. So our goal there is to scrape off the sand that's on top and expose that peat to have kind of an off-channel wetland, open water wetland area. We have two channels coming off of the upstream end here entering the site. We'll maintain connection to the fish ladder going through the dam there, and then the main channel will go through the bypass. So that's where the fish have an easier time of passing, so that will be the main connection point for us, but we'll still maintain some connection to the fish ladder. One more thing for this one, you can see these small tributaries along the side there. Those are just small spring-fed streams that will access some groundwater coming in from the edges and will be additional habitat. Similar to the lower bog restoration, we'll be installing hundreds of pieces of large wood along the channel banks and on the floodplain. So you can see along those outer bends, lots of wood being put in there, and I'll show a few images of what that looks like. That's both for bank stabilization and for habitat for fish and other aquatic organisms, both for lower, middle bog and upper bog here. You'll notice that in the places where we are breaking away from the existing channel, you'll see a larger log jam right in there. And that's to make sure that the river isn't recapturing the old channel right away. So it's a larger log jam, a lot of wood in those locations to keep the channel in its new location. Just some simple diagrams to show what that wood looks like. There's both vertical pieces and horizontal pieces. So it's not just the wood that you see in the channel there. These are 25-foot long logs with 3 to 4 foot diameter root wads on the bottom, and they're driven mostly into the bank to anchor them in place. And it's multiple layers of this wood. You can see one piece underneath there, another log on top, and then the vertical pieces are driven in to keep everything in place. So it's kind of a mixing of a couple dozen pieces of wood in one bend and locked all in place by those different pieces of wood. In plan view, this is what it looks like. So you can see the 2 or 3 different layers of wood along that outer bend. So all of these are buried underground and just the root wads exposed in the channel where there'll be a pool underneath those root wads. So a few images of lower bog just to show you what this looks like immediately after construction. It is a mess right after construction. This is what these sites typically look like. So there's excavators that have just gone through and roughened the whole area. So it's muddy, it's wet, and it doesn't look like it can recover very well, but it does. And within just a few months, the first growing season, we have good growth out on the bog there, still very wet. And then these are those root wads on the outer bends. So looking downstream towards the lower dam there, you can see the outer bends again with the large wood, the vertical pieces sticking in, and the root wads in the channel itself. During the migratory period, it's hard to see, but there are a couple dozen herring hanging out in the upstream pool that was created with this log jam here. So this was just a couple 100 feet downstream from Middle Berm, and these herring were staging in the newly created pool here, getting ready to migrate upstream. This is some of the floodplain large wood that we installed. This is a pool that's not connected to the river channel at all. So it's off-channel pool habitat for turtles, frogs, other animals, and then a lot of wood around there as well. So this was some of the wood that was too small to use in the channel itself, and that wood, again, is good for more terrestrial habitat on the floodplain itself and aquatic habitat in the pool. The planting plan, similar to the lower bog as well. We'll have a couple different areas of planting. The wetland surface will not be seeded at all. It'll be mostly just trees and shrubs planted throughout the bog surface. Right along the edge of the river itself will be about a 10-foot buffer on either side of the channel where we will lay down native seed to get that growth going as quickly as possible. And then along the bog edges where we slope back up to the dirt roads, that'll be a transitional seed mix as well to get that growth going. And then where we are disturbing the sand reuse areas and the staging areas, those will get covered with upland seeding. I'll show some designs for the John Parker Road Bridge as well. As I mentioned, there will be pedestrian access maintained all the way around the bogs here through those dirt roads, and then the new boardwalk being put up where the existing Middle Berm is. So these are the designs done for the Middle Berm boardwalk. Same folks who did the designs for the boardwalk in Lower Dam. So it'll have a very similar look to it. And that's what it looks like now in Lower Bog. And we anticipate similar length, similar dimensions and design. For John Parker Road, this is a pretty, it'll be a pretty big difference from what you see now. There's 3 small pipes right now. And this will be a 24-foot wide free span bridge with concrete abutments and our channel inside of that. So this will be natural channel bottom, gravel and cobble channel bottom, and banks, and there'll be a floodplain bench on each side for terrestrial organisms to pass through. The water line and gas line will be relocated to be alongside the bridge rather than underneath, so we don't get any blockage of flood flows there. And lastly, just to look at the resource areas, it's defined in the NOI submittal, but there'll be changes to all of our resource areas, certainly increases in riverbank and bordering vegetated wetland, with some decreases in land area. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Nick. Courtney, start off? Oh, I'm sorry, does the staff have anything they'd like?
I have nothing to say. I'm impressed.
Okay. Kevin?
Hope it works as well as the lower bog.
Maureen?
Great project.
Betsy? You can keep us here all night.
No, I have
Talked enough.
no question.
You're against it, right?
Jamie?
Just talk a little bit about the bridge replacement or culvert replacement to the bridge.
Sure. Design-wise or during construction?
Implementation.
So this will be a challenging one, certainly, and the timing is important for this. So want to get it done in the winter before traffic picks up in the summertime. So that's our goal, is to get through the rest of the permitting before the end of the year here, so we can get started in the new year. We're working with the town. We'll be working with the water department to be able to cut off that water line, and then they'll with the engineer who designed the bridge. They've also designed the new water pipe that will go in there. So they'll be working closely together to reconnect that. The gas company will be working with the contractor to make sure that gets cut off appropriately, and then they'll be redoing the gas line. The construction will likely take a couple of months. We'll be trying to get the channel dug so that we can have water flowing through during the fish time of year restriction later on, so there's that complication also. But the hope is to have that timing done so that we can have that channel online by the time of year restriction, so we can have active flows going through there. There'll be lots of dewatering during the initial deconstruction of the culvert, the existing culvert and the road, so that the road will be cut off on both sides. There'll be a traffic plan associated with that and signs put up throughout. Let's see, what else? We've got the concrete footers, head walls on both sides, free span bridge on the top, and then railings across either side. Were there any other details you were hoping for?
Thank you.
All set?
Yes, thank you.
Steve?
So the time of year restriction is March 15th to June 30th?
Yeah, we,
And then the fall?
in the fall also, right, we just received a note from Marine Fisheries today also confirming those dates.
So you can have the concrete done before March 15th, is that what you're saying?
Well, the hope is, I think the letter, I need to get clarification on the letter. It said March 15th, but then it also said the time of year restriction would start April 1st. So
Right.
I'll get
Either
clarification
way.
on that. Either way.
You're gonna pour concrete in the
we'll-
winter?
We'll have, yes, there'll be, we'll be working through the winter on that, though we hope to have the channel in place. Even while they might be doing concrete afterwards,
Mhm.
we can have the channel in place for that fish time of year
Right.
restriction.
Okay, thanks.
So I don't expect the whole bridge to be done by then, but the channel in place by then.
And I have to comment on your title of fluvial geomorphologist. Is that a PhD thing, or?
You can, I do
Okay.
not, but yes.
All right. That was, I had to go to the dictionary several times in this proposal. But thank you very much. It's a great project. I really love it.
Steve, you are not the only person in town who's come up to me and said, fluvial geomorphologist, that's a new term for me. I had to go to the dictionary.
You pronounced
you,
it-
Betty.
You pronounced it well, though, that was good.
Thank you. I worked on it.
Peter?
The contractor has a 3-year warranty. What's the long-term maintenance plan? We have a lot of wood around the riverbanks and so forth, and will that have to be redone in 5 years, or what?
Right. No, it's a great question. So the wood will degrade over time. The wood that is fully underwater most of the year will last a lot longer because of that cold water in there. But the wood that is exposed to wetting and drying cycles will rot quicker. The idea is that through the plantings, though, the wood in the channel will last long enough for the trees to mature, fall over, and replace the wood that's in the river. So it's meant to be a self-sustaining design practice for these rivers and wetlands. What we did for Lower Bog, for the log jams that were close to the crossing, the bridge crossing there, or the boardwalk crossing, we did some more anchoring with that wood so that there wasn't a chance of that wood floating and getting caught up on the boardwalk crossing. So for those that are immediately upstream, we'll be more cautious about that.
Another question is, I know that poison ivy is not an invasive plant or non-native species, but if we are going to encourage people to go through the area, are there any plans to minimize poison ivy?
Another good question. So it's not part of the invasive management, certainly for the contractor, and so that's more of a long-term maintenance plan for the town, since that's town property. So it's nothing during construction, it'll all get torn up, and the berm will be removed, so there won't be any poison ivy on the middle berm there, since that'll be gone. So for the most part, it'll just be kind of the edges of those dirt roads to be maintained or mowed down every once in a while.
Thank you.
Mark?
No comments.
I had just one question. It has to do with the sands. In the narrative, it says that that there's pesticides in the sands, and it also sounds as if those sands are gonna be used for filling the drainage ditches and stuff like that. So could you just reassure us about that?
Yes, so this is through a bunch of these projects that have been going through, there's been conversations between the Division of Ecological Restoration and Department of Environmental Protection about what to do with farm soils that have various pesticides and herbicides. And the common ones are DDTs, DDDs, dieldrin, and those types of things. For these bogs, we actually don't have as much as we've had on other projects. So we're in pretty good shape here. But the general guidance from DEP was the ecosystem in this area has been dealing with these chemicals for a long time. And by doing this work, we're not making the system any worse. And if we were to take that material off-site, we'd have to manage it as contaminated soil. Not this, I don't think, because it's not hot enough, but in other ones that we've had. So by managing it on-site, it's not changing the condition at all. The organisms that burrow through it have been burrowing through it for a long time. So the material that we'll be cutting out of the new channel here, that will be going in to fill the old channel and filling in the ditches, and we'll just kind of get moved around in there.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Does anyone else?
I
Yes,
just have-
Maureen?
What's the life expectancy of the steel plates and bolts that you're using?
For the anchoring in
Yeah.
the wood, longer than the wood. So the wood would typically be, for the ones that are being wetted and dried frequently in the 25 to 40-year range, 50-year range. Ones that'll stay wet for a long time, those could be upwards of 75 years. But the bolts in there will certainly last through that 40 to 50-year period.
Are they stainless?
Galvanized, I believe. I have to look at the technical specs on that. Good question.
Thank you.
Betsy?
So this is a question that came up when I was taking people around the other day, from Brad Chase, actually. And he noticed some of the large woody debris that we have are pine trees, and he was wondering the difference in lifespan of a pine that is used as opposed to, say, an oak
A locust?
or a
Or
locust.
cedar.
Right. So we will, there's kind of a range of species that we'll use, and some that we really want to steer away from. Cottonwoods are pretty brittle, so we don't use those. But oaks are great, pines are great, cedars are great. Typically for these projects, it's hard to find large wood that meets the specifications. And much of the wood is, in the past has been just dropped off and donated. So you kind of take what free wood you can, and whatever wood is being cleared nearby for solar farms or other types of clearing. It's typically the pines that we have around here. So that's really the most readily available wood that we use. So that's typically what we'll have here, but if we're doing some clearing like we had for some of the sand reuse areas, we did clear some of those, and we used those oaks and maples that were there.
Right, do we, Courtney?
I may have missed it in here. How long is it you anticipate the construction of the bridge over John Parker? How long will that take?
I think the structural engineer was thinking that the road would need to be closed for 3 months. Was that about right, Betsy? 2 to 3 months? So I believe that's the time frame that we're shooting for.
And roughly when would that be?
Depends on when we get our final permits from the Army Corps, but the hope would be in the February to April timeframe. If we can get started in January, great, but realistically with mobilization and that sort of thing, might not be until February.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairman, the only thing, Nick, is we need a copy of that PowerPoint presentation. If you could send that to me electronically,
It's
that'd be
on the
great.
desktop here,
Oh, yeah, we'll just move it then.
if that works, yeah.
Okay, great. We'll just remind me.
Good observation.
I make a motion to accept the project as discussed.
Second.
Close the hearing.
And we have a second. Anything else from the board at this time? Peter, no?
We will
Anything from the public? Any questions or comments from the public?
Hi, I'm Wendy Bisler, president of the Coonamessett River Trust. I just want to say, of course, we love this project. It's awesome, and we hope you approve it. And if you or members of the public have not been down to see the changes of the lower part of the river, try to go down there because it's really gorgeous and wonderful to see. Thanks.
Thanks, Wendy. All right. All those in favor of closing the hearing, taking it under advisement, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you, Nick, thank you all. Next, continued requests for a certificate of compliance, Brendan Zaltis et al. That's 4-11 Farmwood Place and Pierce Place. Are
Still-
we there yet?
We're not there
No.
yet. There was a slight typo in the extension that we needed to clear up, so you're signing a new one tonight. Yeah, you're signing a new one tonight, so we're gonna send it off tomorrow and get that request to withdraw.
What's up with that?
Basically, they don't, until they receive their extension and get it recorded, they don't wanna ask.
So could
for
I make a motion
withdrawal,
to,
which I don't understand why.
to continue this to next week?
Yeah,
Second.
we'll just keep,
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, so moved.
we're trying, Jamie.
And vote orders of conditions. William Mackey, 9 and 15 Penzance Road, Woods Hole, Massachusetts.
Oh, come on, sorry. Here you go, Susan. It's Mark, Peter, Steve, Jamie, Mary, Betsy, Kevin, Courtney, and Freddie.
He gets two
This-
votes?
No, he does not get 2 votes. This was the small repair, the seawall and the groin,
Yep.
and a little bit of beach nourishment, using the sand ramp for beach nourishment. Staff didn't have any major concerns or conditions when we went out there to review it. There don't seem to be, at this time, proposing any work on the seawall. It's just that groin that comes out.
Just the usual things for when you have equipment?
Yeah.
All right, anything else? Mark?
Did we decide that we needed a assessment of the sand that was being used for this ramp?
yeah,
As it's
okay,
going to
yeah.
be put on
Yes.
the beach?
Yep,
Yeah, I just made the recommendation that it be fairly coarse grain, because if you have fine grained sand there, the first time the waves come in,
Well, often you get a grading analysis of it goes
Right.
in the file. That's
Right.
what I think we should have.
you want a grain size analysis?
Yeah.
Okay.
all right, I move to approve this as discussed.
Second.
Right, anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, so moved.
Almost got it.
Scott and Colleen Filosi, 122 Bywater Court, Falmouth, Massachusetts.
This is the same point.
Forms everyone but Maury.
This is the house that's coming out of the velocity zone, so they want to enclose the lower
Right.
portion of the house with the appropriate flood vents. It's not gonna be breakaway panels, they're in the A zone, they can allow the solid walls with the flood vents, correct, Jamie? I think the only issue was to gain compliance for the last project, they needed to install some.
Was there an issue with trees?
That's where I was
She's
getting
talking
at.
about.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That, when they got compliance, there were 6 seaters that were on the site, they're now gone.
Right.
They are in your jurisdiction. I respectfully disagree with what Mr. McGrath stated at the hearing, so the board can decide
It's in
whether
the,
the
it's
trees.
in the flood zone.
It is in the flood zone.
I think the 6-seater
The trees
should go.
come back, okay.
Mm.
Okay.
Good.
That could be a tongue twister. 6-seaters should be replaced.
Okay,
6-seater should, 6-seater should, 6-seater should.
we'll look at the
No?
size, that was, yeah. We'll get the appropriate size, Courtney.
How will survive.
Move to accept as discussed, particularly the cedars.
Second.
All right, anything else? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, unanimous, so moved. And James and Mary Mangraviti, 101 Madeline Road, East Falmouth, Massachusetts.
This was the dock.
Oh, yeah, the dog.
The better dock.
Better
It's
dog.
a better dog.
Much
Oh,
better.
yeah, because it's the one that went down and, yeah, okay.
Move to accept.
But, is this the one where we got a letter
sorry.
about the light penetration from DMF?
No.
The height, the ratio?
I think so,
Yes. They were saying, I think 1.5 to 1 instead of 1 to 1.
We're changing that for everybody.
Yes,
That's Sherwood,
I've
too.
seen it a couple times. It's basically a footnote.
that's
So
what they're-
incorporate DMF's comments regarding the height ratio. I thought they were saying that they would prefer the height
That's what they're recommending?
That's what they're
versus the,
recommending.
versus the, they would prefer height versus the grading.
Right.
Yes.
But I thought they said that, I thought he said it was 1.5 to 1.
I think he said that
I know, but somebody
it
asked.
ranges from 1.5 to 1.
Didn't he
He
say that it
said-
was?
Well, I
said
have
it
the thing
ranged.
here, so,
The files over there.
The width is 4 feet.
that doesn't matter.
Does someone have the
We're looking, she's
written out
looking at the
minutes?
plan, I'm looking at the narratives.
It does matter, it's width to height.
Oh, you're,
The width,
yeah, you're right.
With the height
I'm
makes a
right, I'm
difference.
sorry.
anybody have a, where was it?
Here.
Oh, I'm looking for a
A
Scale?
ruler. Oh, here.
There were a few over here.
We can condition it to be in accordance with DMF's new recommendations for the 1.5 to 1.
Yes, right, we're just, bear with us for a minute, trying to figure out if it's
It is, it's almost 2 to 1,
oh, okay.
except maybe for that little stretch there, but it's ridiculous to have that come up.
Yeah. All right, yeah, you might as.
This one already is,
Right.
Okay.
but the
So
question
there's no harm in
this
that
is also
stipulating.
50% grading, and so what they were saying is, rather than have 50% grading right there, you're better to have 1.5 to 1
No, I know what they're saying.
with solid, but 50% grading is better than
Nothing.
100% obscured,
I would do 1.5 to 1 and 50%.
which
Me
they
too.
did do.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
and we can put that in as a condition.
Yeah.
The fact that they are proposing it doesn't, you know. All right, anything else?
I move we accept as discussed.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
And there are signings over there.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, so
Kevin, I'll
moved.
be sending out
We're
an
adjourned.
email
That time for Sunday.
regarding